Arman and his wife Hira had dreamed about owning a house for many years. After saving every penny from their work, they finally found a small home in a quiet neighborhood called Pinewood Lane. The streets were lined with tall green trees and children ran around playing in the yards. Neighbors smiled at people walking past. It felt like the perfect place to start a new chapter of life. Arman worked as a technician in the city. He fixed machines, repaired tools, and sometimes helped people with their home appliances. Hira worked as a dispatcher at the local 911 center. Her job was not easy. She often heard people shouting, crying, or panicking over the phone, but she always stayed calm. She had a clear and soothing voice that could comfort anyone in distress. She often told Arman, "A calm voice can solve half of the problem." The house they bought was small but cozy. White walls reflected the sunlight in the morning. A small front garden waited for flowers to be planted, and a porch had 2 chairs where they could sit in the evenings. The kitchen was bright, and the living room had large windows that showed the green trees outside. For the first few days, everything felt peaceful. They unpacked boxes, arranged their clothes, and talked about decorating the rooms. But life in a new neighborhood often comes with surprises. The first surprise came in the form of their next-door neighbor, Karen. Karen was the head of the Homeowners Association, often called the HOA. She was a strict woman in her late 50s who liked everything in the neighborhood to follow exact rules. Every lawn had to be trimmed at the same height. Cars had to be parked properly inside the driveway. Even the color of mailboxes had to match. When Arman first met her, she smiled tightly and handed him a paper. "These are the community guidelines," she said. "It is important to follow these rules. It keeps our neighborhood beautiful." Her voice was polite but firm. Arman thanked her and looked at Hira with a small smile. "She seems strict," he said. Hira laughed softly. "Every neighborhood has one. Just be polite and you will be fine." For the first few weeks, things were quiet. Arman kept his lawn clean, parked his car correctly, and waved at Karen whenever she walked her small dog. But Karen always seemed to find something to complain about. One morning, she knocked on their door and said, "Your trash bins were too close to the road yesterday. That is against the rule." Another time, she commented, "Your grass is slightly taller than the rest of the street. You should cut it today." Arman smiled politely even when he wanted to roll his eyes. Hira told him to ignore it. "She is just doing her job," she said. "Don't take it personally." But Karen's actions became more frequent and intense. One sunny Saturday, Arman was washing his car in the driveway. Music played softly from a small speaker. He was happy, enjoying the warm sunlight. Hira was inside, cleaning the kitchen. From across the street, Karen watched him with her arms crossed. She frowned and walked toward him. "You cannot wash your car here," she said sharply. "Water flowing to the street is against HOA rules." Arman was confused. "It is just a little water. It will dry in a few minutes." "I am not harming anything." Karen shook her head. "Rules are rules. I will report this to the HOA board." Arman tried to stay calm. "Okay, I will stop for today," he said politely. Karen took out her phone and began taking pictures of his car, the driveway, and even him. Arman felt frustrated. Later, he told Hira about it and she laughed softly. "She must have too much free time," she said. The next day, he noticed Karen staring from her porch again while he fixed a small fence post. She whispered into her phone, probably reporting another small issue. By the evening, they received an email from the HOA. The email said Arman had violated community rules for unauthorized car washing and unapproved fence maintenance. Arman felt upset. "She is making everything into a problem," he said to Hira. Hira smiled and said calmly, "Just stay calm. Keep records of everything she does. That is all you need to do." But Karen did not stop. She seemed to watch every move Arman made. One day she said his garden hose was too visible. Another time, she complained that his porch light was too bright. Arman tried to stay calm, but Hira noticed his frustration growing. Then one Thursday evening, something happened that changed everything. Arman was returning from work. He had helped a friend whose car had broken down. He parked his car in the driveway and stepped out. Karen was outside, holding her phone and pointing at him. "You cannot park like that. I am calling the police," she shouted. Arman sighed. "Karen, I will move it inside in a minute. Please stop." But Karen had already dialed 911. She described him loudly. "There is a suspicious man in front of my neighbor's house. He is blocking the road." Arman was shocked. "Suspicious? I live here, he said loudly. Inside the house, Hira was working her evening shift at 911. She answered the next incoming call. 911, what is your emergency? She said calmly. Karen's voice filled the headset. There is a strange man outside my neighbor's house. He seems suspicious. Hira froze for a second. The description sounded exactly like her husband. She realized immediately who it was. Her mind raced. She could not believe her neighbor had called 911 for something so small. Hira kept her voice steady. Ma'am, can you describe what is happening? She asked, hiding a small laugh. She was trying to stay professional. Karen gave a long description. Hira listened carefully. After a few seconds, she spoke again. Ma'am, thank you for your concern. I will make sure everything is okay. She stayed quiet for a few moments, thinking of the best way to handle the situation. Meanwhile, Armin was still outside, wondering why the police had not arrived yet. He had no idea Hira was on the other end of the line. Karen continued talking to the dispatcher. He is moving strangely. I think he is dangerous. You need to send someone immediately. Hira stayed calm. Ma'am, I understand your concern. I will send an officer to check. Stay on the line if possible. Karen looked surprised when she heard footsteps approaching from inside the house. She did not notice Armin standing behind her, holding a small garden tool in his hand. At that moment, Hira decided it was better to solve the situation quietly. She told Karen, Ma'am, I can see there is no danger. The man you described is a resident. Everything is fine. Karen's eyes widened in shock. What, are you saying? Hira laughed softly. Yes, it is my husband. Everything is okay. No need to worry, Karen froze. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Armin smiled. Hi, Karen, I live here. You do not need to call the police for small things. Karen turned red with embarrassment. She dropped her phone and muttered something about rules in the neighborhood. Armin and Hira just smiled. For the first time, Armin realized how funny it was that Karen had reported him to 911. Hira laughed quietly. Next time, maybe she will think twice, she said. After the 911 incident, Armin and Hira thought things might finally settle down. They laughed about it over dinner, imagining how surprised Karen must have been when she realized the suspicious man was actually Armin. They hoped it would be the last of her complaints for a while, but Karen was not a neighbor who gave up easily. The very next morning, as Armin stepped outside to water the front garden, he saw Karen standing across the street. She was watching him closely, her small notebook in hand. Every time he moved, she scribbled something down. Armin frowned. It looks like she is planning another report, he said quietly to Hira. Hira smiled and shook her head. Ignore her. Focus on your work. She only has power to complain, not to punish you unfairly. Armin tried to follow her advice, but it was difficult. Every action in their yard felt monitored. When he mowed the lawn, Karen walked by slowly, pretending to check her phone but keeping her eyes on him. When he trimmed the bushes, she appeared on her porch as if by magic, sipping tea and making notes. One Saturday, Armin decided to relax. He set up a small table on the porch and started reading a book. Hira was inside making fresh lemonade. The air was warm and quiet. Armin thought maybe he could enjoy the weekend. Suddenly, he noticed Karen walking toward him. She stopped at the edge of the driveway and smiled tightly. Good morning, Armin. Just wanted to remind you that your grass is growing faster than the neighborhood standard, she said. Armin closed his book slowly. Good morning, Karen. Thank you for the reminder. I will take care of it. Karen nodded, but then added, Also, I noticed your trash cans were not fully hidden behind the fence yesterday. You should correct that immediately. Armin sighed but smiled politely. Thank you for the information. When Karen left, Armin returned to reading. He felt tired from constantly being observed. Hira noticed his frustration. She came out with lemonade and said softly, Do not let her ruin your peace. We can deal with her slowly and calmly. Armin nodded. He knew she was right, but patience was becoming harder every day. That afternoon, Armin decided to take a walk around the neighborhood to clear his mind. Hira stayed home to finish some work. As he walked, he noticed Karen again. She was speaking to another neighbor, pointing toward Armin's house. Armin slowed down. He wondered what she was saying. Maybe she was sharing her rules with the other neighbors. It made him feel uncomfortable, but he kept walking and waved politely. Karen froze for a moment, then waved back, but her smile did not reach her eyes. When he returned home, Hira was waiting with a concerned look. "Did you see her?" she asked. "Yes," Armin said. "She is spreading stories again, I think." Hira nodded. "Let's just focus on us. We cannot control her behavior, but we can control ours." The following week, the HOA sent another notice. This time, Karen had reported excessive noise from Armin's house. They claimed his music had been too loud, even though Armin had only played it at a normal volume. Armin laughed in disbelief. "Now she is reporting music?" he said to Hira. Hira smiled but advised caution. "Ignore it. Respond politely to the HOA, and keep a record of everything she does. That is our best defense." Armin tried to follow her advice. He started taking photos of the yard and the house each day. He wrote down small notes about every interaction with Karen. It became a daily habit. One afternoon, Hira received a special call at work. She answered the phone and realized immediately it was from Karen. Hira stayed professional. 911, what is your emergency?" she said calmly. Karen's voice came through. "Yes, this is about the house next to mine. The man is doing something strange in his yard again. You need to send help." Hira held back a small laugh and asked, "Can you describe what is happening?" Karen explained in detail, but Hira could tell it was minor, just her watching Armin plant flowers and trim the bushes. "Ma'am, everything seems normal. He is a resident. There is no emergency," Hira said carefully. Karen sounded shocked. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Hira replied firmly. "I can see that there is no danger." "You can relax." Karen finally ended the call, but Hira could hear her muttering. Hira knew this was going to continue, but she remained calm. Armin came inside a few hours later, smiling but tired. "She called 911 again?" he asked. Hira nodded. "Yes, but I handled it." "Nothing happened," Armin laughed softly. "She is really serious about these rules, isn't she?" "Yes, she is," Hira said. "We just need to stay calm and polite. That will help more than arguing." The next day, Armin and Hira decided to take small precautions. They cleaned the yard early in the morning and avoided activities that Karen could exaggerate. They even made a small schedule for outdoor chores so that Karen would see everything being done quietly and neatly. Despite their efforts, Karen continued to find ways to report them. Once she claimed that their mailbox was not painted properly. Another time she said their garden hose was not coiled neatly. Every small detail became a reason for complaint. One afternoon, Armin was fixing a small leak in the garden faucet. He wore gloves and worked carefully. Hira watched from the window. Karen appeared on her porch immediately, staring at him. She took out her phone as if ready to take pictures. Armin laughed quietly and waved at her. Karen froze, then looked away, pretending she was checking her phone. Hira smiled from the window. "She cannot stop watching, but we can stay calm," she said. Over time, Armin and Hira developed a system. They kept detailed records, stayed polite to Karen, and avoided unnecessary attention. They even learned to predict when Karen might appear based on her usual schedule. It became almost a game, although it was tiring. One evening, after another day of careful gardening and polite waves, Armin and Hira sat on the porch. The sun was setting and the sky was orange and pink. For a moment, everything felt peaceful again. Hira turned to Armin. "You know," she said softly, "even though Karen is difficult, she has taught us patience and planning. We are learning to stay calm no matter what." Armin nodded. "Yes, it is strange, but you are right. We have become more careful and organized because of her." That evening, they laughed together, imagining how Karen would react if they suddenly ignored all rules. They decided not to try it, but the thought made them feel better. They went inside for dinner, ready to face whatever Karen would do next. Armin and Hira had learned that living in Pinewood Lane meant patience, careful planning, and a calm mind. Despite Karen's watchful eyes, they were determined to enjoy their home and their life together. Little did they know, Karen had one more plan in mind that would test their patience and cleverness in a way they had never imagined. After weeks of small complaints and constant observation, Armin and Hira thought they had grown used to Karen's strict nature. They had learned to plan their daily activities carefully and remain calm, no matter how petty her reports seemed. But Karen was not finished. Her obsession with the rules was about to escalate in a way they had never expected. It all started on a quiet Wednesday morning. Armin stepped outside with a toolbox in his hands. He planned to fix the loose gate latch at the front of the house. Hira was inside, finishing some work for her shift later that evening. The sun shone warmly and a soft breeze moved the leaves on the trees. Everything felt peaceful, but Karen was already standing across the street. She leaned on her small wooden fence, notebook in hand, and watched Armin carefully. She scribbled something down as he approached the gate. "Good morning, Armin," Karen said sharply. "Are you sure you are allowed to repair your gate yourself? Some work requires HOA approval." Armin looked up and smiled politely. "Good morning, Karen. I checked the rules. Small repairs like this do not need approval." Karen frowned but did not respond. She returned to taking notes, muttering under her breath. As Armin worked, he noticed Karen dialing her phone. He frowned but kept calm. He had learned not to react. Inside, Hira was getting ready for her shift. She noticed the incoming call on her line. The 911 system flagged it as a routine HOA complaint. She answered professionally. What is your emergency?" Hira said calmly. Karen's voice came through, filled with concern. "There is a man outside fixing his gate without permission. I think it might be against the rules. Someone should check." Hira held back a quiet laugh. She knew exactly who it was. "Ma'am, I can see that he is a resident doing a small repair." "There is no emergency." Karen paused. "Are you sure?" "I do not want any rules broken." "Yes, I am sure. Everything is fine," Hira said. "He is allowed to fix the gate." Karen sounded frustrated but finally hung up. Hira shook her head, smiling. "She is relentless," she muttered. Meanwhile, Armin finished the repair and leaned on the gate to check his work. Karen scribbled more notes. Armin waved politely and Karen walked away slowly, still muttering. That afternoon, Armin and Hira went for a short walk around the neighborhood to enjoy the sun. They hoped that spending time outside would help them forget about Karen for a while. But as they walked, they saw her again. Karen was talking to another neighbor, pointing toward Armin's house. She appeared to be explaining every detail of the morning's gate repair. Armin stopped and sighed. "She is spreading stories again," he said quietly. Hira squeezed his hand. "Ignore her. Let's just enjoy the walk," she said softly. Despite their patience, Karen's actions were beginning to affect other neighbors. Some of them had started watching Armin and Hira as well. It was uncomfortable, but Armin and Hira decided to stay calm and keep doing everything properly. They would not let Karen control their lives completely. The next week, things became more complicated. Armin wanted to install a small garden light along the walkway to brighten the path at night. Hira helped him choose the right spot and turned on the light to test it. It was subtle and soft, not too bright, but it added a warm glow to the garden. That evening, Karen noticed the new light. She immediately took out her phone and called the HOA office. Armin and Hira did not hear the call, but the following morning, a notice arrived in their mailbox. The HOA claimed the garden light did not meet approved brightness and placement standards. Armin laughed quietly as he read the notice. "Even our lights are under inspection," he said to Hira. Hira smiled. "We are learning patience every day," she replied. The couple decided to respond politely to the HOA, sending photos showing the light was subtle and within safe standards. They also kept a copy of the notice for their records. This careful documentation became their new routine, but Karen's persistence did not end. She began leaving notes on their porch. One morning, a small piece of paper appeared on the front step. It read, "Your plants are growing too tall. Please trim them." Armin picked up the note and showed it to Hira. "She is really serious about this," he said with a small laugh. Hira nodded. "Yes, but we are handling it calmly. That is what matters." The next few days were tense. Karen watched everything, wrote notes, and reported minor issues. Armin and Hira followed all rules carefully, yet Karen seemed never satisfied. One Saturday, Armin decided to mow the lawn early in the morning to avoid complaints. Hira was inside, preparing breakfast. As he worked, he noticed Karen's car parked across the street. She was sitting inside, looking directly at him through the windshield. Armin sighed. "She is not giving up," he said quietly. Hira came out with a plate of sandwiches. "Let's have lunch together after you finish. We will enjoy the sun and forget about her for a while," she said. Armin nodded. He finished mowing the lawn as Karen continued to watch. Once he completed the work, he smiled, wiped his forehead, and waved at her. Karen waved back, but her frown did not fade. Later that afternoon, Hira received another call. Karen had dialed 911 again. Hira stayed professional as she listened to the complaint. Karen described how Armin had been mowing the lawn suspiciously and suggested that officers should check. Hira remained calm. "Ma'am, he is a resident doing normal yard work. There is no emergency," she said firmly. Karen muttered and ended the call, clearly frustrated. Armin came inside after the call. "She called 911 again?" he asked. "Yes," Hira said, "but everything is fine. We are handling it properly," Armin laughed. "She really has too much free time." Hira smiled. "It is better that way. We stay calm, and she cannot control us completely." Over the next week, Armin and Hira developed a more organized schedule. They timed outdoor activities early in the morning or late in the evening, did minor repairs quietly, and documented everything. It became a part of their routine, and slowly the tension decreased. One evening, Armin and Hira sat on the porch drinking tea. The sky was golden and the neighborhood was quiet. Armin looked at Hira and said, "Even though Karen is difficult, we are learning a lot. Patience, planning, and calmness are useful skills." Hira nodded. "Yes, and we are doing it together. That makes it easier. Karen cannot change our life if we stay calm and polite." They smiled, enjoying the warm breeze and the beauty of the evening. Karen was still out there watching from across the street, but for now Armin and Hira had found a way to protect their peace. Little did they know, Karen was planning her next move. It would be a challenge that tested not only their patience but also their cleverness. For now they could rest and enjoy their home. But soon they would face a situation that would require both courage and strategy to handle. Armin and Hira had been living in Pinewood Lane for several months. Every day brought a new challenge with Karen, the strict HOA neighbor. Even though her constant monitoring and complaints were tiring, they had learned to stay calm, follow the rules carefully, and document everything. They thought they had found a rhythm, a balance that allowed them to enjoy their home despite Karen's watchful eyes. One Thursday morning, Armin was working in the garden. He planted new flowers along the front walkway, while Hira tended to the vegetables in their small backyard plot. The sun shone warmly and the air was filled with the scent of fresh soil and blooming flowers. For the moment it seemed like a perfect day, but from across the street Karen appeared. She stood on her porch, notebook in hand, carefully observing every move. Every step Armin took and every plant Hira touched seemed to be under her strict inspection. "Good morning, Karen," Armin said politely. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Karen did not respond immediately. She tilted her head and scribbled in her notebook. Then she said sharply, "Remember, you need HOA approval for all planting that exceeds the original layout. I will report it if it is not corrected." Armin smiled politely. "Thank you for your concern. Everything we are planting is allowed." Karen muttered something under her breath and returned to her porch chair. Armin shook his head and continued working, focusing on the flowers. Hira glanced up and whispered, "She seems more serious today." Armin laughed quietly. "It is a part of living here. We can handle it." By the afternoon, Armin had finished planting. The walkway looked colorful and bright. Hira watered the flowers and checked that the vegetables were growing well. Both of them felt proud of their small garden improvements. However, their satisfaction was short-lived. Karen had already made a phone call. A few minutes later, a notice appeared on their front door. It was from the HOA, stating that Armin and Hira had violated the rule regarding garden modifications without prior approval. Armin picked up the paper and showed it to Hira. "She is at it, again," he said. Hira read it carefully and smiled. "We can respond politely. We have all the photos and notes. We can prove that everything is allowed." That evening, they drafted a clear, polite letter to the HOA. They included photographs of the garden layout and references to the community rules. After sending the email, they felt calmer, knowing they had documented everything correctly. But Karen was not done. Over the next few days, she began leaving small notes on their porch, commenting on minor things like the height of their mailbox, the color of their garden hoses, and even the position of the porch chairs. Every note was written in a sharp tone, reminding Armin and Hira to follow the rules. One Saturday, Hira suggested they take a short break and go for a walk around the neighborhood. The sun was warm and the breeze was gentle. Armin agreed, thinking it would be a good way to relax and forget about Karen for a while. As they walked, they noticed Karen talking to another neighbor. She pointed toward Armin's house, clearly explaining some new rule or complaint.
Hira held Armin's hand and whispered, "She is trying to influence the neighbors."
We should ignore her and keep going. Armin nodded. Yes, we cannot let her control our lives. Returning home, they decided to prepare a small surprise for themselves. They set up 2 chairs on the porch, brewed fresh tea, and sat together watching the sunset. The moment was peaceful, and for a few minutes they felt free from Karen's constant scrutiny. However, that peace was short-lived. That evening, Armin received a call from a local delivery company. They had come to deliver a package that required confirmation. When Armin went to sign, he noticed Karen standing across the street, seemingly observing the delivery process carefully. "Now, even deliveries?" Armin muttered quietly. Hira laughed softly. "She seems to have nothing better to do." As the days passed, Karen's behavior escalated. She began to question small details about the house, including the direction of the front doormat, the alignment of their garden stones, and even how neatly the trash cans were stored at night. Each time she sent emails to the HOA or left notes on the porch. Armin and Hira had learned to deal with it, but it was exhausting. They had to carefully plan every activity, document everything, and stay polite even when Karen's complaints were unnecessary. One evening, Hira suggested a clever idea. "What if we turned this situation to our advantage?" she asked. Armin looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" Hira smiled. "We can document everything she does. Every note, every call, every report. If we collect enough, we can present it to the HOA board. That way her behavior will be reviewed officially." Armin's eyes widened. "You mean instead of reacting to her, we make a record and show the board how persistent and unnecessary her complaints are?" "Yes," Hira replied. "We are calm, polite, and follow the rules. Karen is the one creating unnecessary tension. If we show the board the facts, they will see the truth." Armin nodded, impressed by the plan. "I like it. Let's start collecting everything." Over the next week, they organized a system. They kept every note Karen left, every email she sent, and every minor report she made. They took photos of all their activities, making sure every action followed the community rules. They even started a small journal, noting the time, date, and nature of Karen's observations. Karen continued to monitor them, unaware that Armin and Hira were preparing their own careful record. Her daily notes, phone calls, and emails became part of a detailed collection that highlighted her obsessive behavior. One afternoon, Armin was fixing a small leak near the garden hose. Karen appeared immediately, taking photos and scribbling notes. Armin smiled politely and continued his work. Hira, inside the house, recorded the incident for their files. By the end of the week, they had collected enough evidence to show the HOA board the extent of Karen's behavior. The collection included every minor complaint, email, and note she had left. Armin and Hira were ready to present it in a calm, professional way. That weekend, Hira submitted a request to meet the HOA board. They explained that while they wanted to follow all community rules, Karen's repeated reports were excessive and created unnecessary tension. They provided all their documentation as proof. The board reviewed the evidence carefully. They were surprised by the frequency and nature of Karen's complaints. The clear documentation from Armin and Hira showed that they had followed all rules meticulously. The board decided to address Karen's behavior officially, reminding her that rules are meant to maintain order, not to harass neighbors. For Armin and Hira, this was a small victory. They felt relieved knowing that their careful planning, patience, and calm approach had worked. They could finally enjoy their home without constant fear of unnecessary complaints. That evening, they sat on the porch sipping tea and watched the sunset. The garden looked colorful and bright. The flowers swayed gently in the breeze, and the neighborhood felt peaceful. Armin turned to Hira. "I am proud of us," he said softly. "We stayed calm and handled everything carefully. Now we can enjoy our home without stress." Hira smiled. "Yes, patience, planning, and teamwork were the key. We stayed calm, and we won the battle quietly." For the first time in months, Armin and Hira felt free in their own home. Karen's strictness had been managed, and their peace was restored. They realized that sometimes patience and clever planning were stronger than anger or frustration. Little did they know, Karen's next move would test their patience once again, but now they were ready. They had learned to stay calm, document carefully, and face challenges together as a team. Pinewood Lane was still their home, and nothing could change that. After submitting their detailed records to the HOA board, Armin and Hira felt a sense of relief. For the first time, they believed that Karen's constant complaints might finally have limits. Yet, they knew she could be persistent, so they continued their careful routines, documenting everything while staying calm and polite. One Monday morning, Armin was outside fixing a small crack in the driveway. Hira watered the plants nearby. The sun was soft and the neighborhood was unusually quiet. Armin was pleased to see that the flowers they planted were growing well. Hira smiled, feeling proud of their garden. Karen appeared on her porch across the street, notebook in hand. She stared intently at the couple, muttering to herself. Armin waved politely. Karen waved back stiffly, but continued to write in her notebook. Hira noticed and whispered, "Let's continue what we were doing. We have nothing to hide." Armin nodded. "Yes, calm and steady. That is our strength." Over the next few days, Karen attempted to report small issues again. She sent emails to the HOA, left notes on the porch, and even tried to speak to other neighbors about minor details of Armin and Hira's home. But now, the HOA had already reviewed the previous complaints. Their patience and detailed records had given them credibility. Any frivolous complaints Karen submitted were treated carefully by the HOA, and she received a formal reminder that repeated unnecessary reports were not acceptable. One afternoon, the HOA sent an official notice to Karen, stating that excessive monitoring and repeated unnecessary complaints were creating tension in the neighborhood. The notice reminded her that rules were meant to maintain harmony, not to harass neighbors. Karen read the notice silently. Her strict expression softened slightly. For the first time, she realized that her behavior had consequences. Armin and Hira continued their life quietly. With Karen's attempts officially limited, they felt a weight lifted. They no longer had to plan every action to avoid unnecessary complaints. Simple activities like mowing the lawn, planting flowers, or watering the garden became peaceful moments again. Hira suggested they celebrate their small victory. "Let's have a barbecue this weekend," she said, smiling. "It will be relaxing and we can invite some neighbors too." Armin agreed. "Yes, let's enjoy the weekend without worry." On Saturday, they prepared their backyard for the barbecue. They cleaned the area, arranged chairs, and set up a small table with food. A few neighbors were invited, including some who had witnessed Karen's frequent complaints. The gathering was simple, friendly, and warm. Karen was aware of the gathering. She watched from her porch but did not approach or interfere. The HOA notice had made her cautious. Armin and Hira noticed her, but they remained calm. They continued serving food, talking with neighbors, and laughing quietly. As the sun set, the backyard was filled with soft light and happy conversations. Armin looked at Hira and said, "It feels good to enjoy our home again." Hira nodded. "Yes, peace is restored. We stayed calm and acted wisely. That was the key." Later in the evening, Karen approached Armin and Hira briefly. She spoke softly. "I have read the HOA notice. I will respect the rules and avoid unnecessary complaints." Her tone was hesitant, but it carried sincerity. Armin smiled politely. "Thank you, Karen. We are glad we can all enjoy the neighborhood." Karen nodded and returned to her porch. This time, she did not watch every move or make notes constantly. Her strictness remained, but it was tempered by the HOA's reminder. Armin and Hira felt confident that life would be more peaceful. The next few weeks passed smoothly. Armin continued his daily tasks. Hira managed her work, and their home remained a calm and happy place. Karen still followed neighborhood rules, but her obsessive monitoring had stopped. The neighborhood felt harmonious again, and Armin and Hira could finally enjoy their garden, their porch, and the simple joys of home. One evening, as they sat on the porch sipping tea, Armin reflected on the past months. It was not easy dealing with Karen, but patience, planning, and staying calm helped us succeed. Hira nodded. Yes, and working together made it even stronger. We proved that being polite and organized is more powerful than anger or frustration. They watched the sunset together. The sky was golden, the flowers swayed gently in the breeze, and the neighborhood was quiet. For the first time in many months, Armin and Hira felt a complete sense of peace in their home. A few days later, the HOA sent a formal acknowledgement to Armin and Hira, praising their professionalism and patience. The board had reviewed all the documentation and appreciated their careful records and polite approach. It was a small recognition, but it gave them a sense of justice. Karen read the same notice. She realized that her repeated complaints had been documented clearly, and that the HOA expected her to act responsibly. She could no longer interfere with Armin and Hira's life without consequences. From that day forward, Karen followed the rules respectfully. She remained a careful neighbor, but her obsessive behavior had ended. Armin and Hira could finally enjoy their home without fear of constant monitoring or unnecessary complaints. Armin and Hira took this experience as a lesson in patience and clever planning. They realized that calmness, politeness, and teamwork could overcome even the most persistent challenges. They could now focus on their life together, their garden, and the small joys that made a house a home. Months passed. The garden bloomed beautifully, the porch became their favorite place for quiet evenings, and the neighborhood felt peaceful. Children played outside, neighbors greeted each other, and the small community found harmony once again. Armin and Hira continued to document their work only as a precaution, but it was no longer stressful. One sunny morning, Hira laughed softly. "Remember how Karen reported you to 911?" she said. Armin chuckled. "Yes, it feels like a lifetime ago, but it taught us a lot about patience, careful planning, and staying calm." Hira nodded. "We turned a difficult situation into an opportunity to show wisdom and teamwork." They smiled at each other, feeling proud of how they had handled months of tension. Their home was safe, peaceful, and full of happiness. The flowers, the porch, and the sunlight were no longer threatened by unnecessary complaints. They had taken control of their life, and nothing could disturb their peace again. That evening, as they watched the sunset together, they held hands and felt grateful. They knew challenges might come in the future, but now they had the tools to face them calmly and wisely. Pinewood Lane had become their home not just because of the house, but because of the way they had protected it with patience, courage, and teamwork. Armin looked at Hira and whispered, "We did it together." Hira smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Yes, together we can handle anything." The neighborhood was quiet, the garden was colorful, and peace had finally returned. After months of tension, Armin and Hira could now enjoy every moment in their home, knowing that calmness, planning, and teamwork were the keys to overcoming any challenge. Their home had become a true sanctuary, and their bond had grown stronger because of the challenges they faced. Pinewood Lane was no longer just a neighborhood. It was a place of peace, resilience, and harmony for Armin and Hira.